Okay, so now we're going to have a brief Q&A with the UTERN representative, Simon. So briefly, if you could explain within about 2 minutes, kind of what are the activities that UTERN conducts so that everyone can become really aware of what you guys do.
Sure. So UTERN stands for University of Toronto Environmental Resource Network. We've been around since 2003. We are a levy group with the University of Toronto Student Union, an undergraduate union at U of T. And what we do is we actually do two things. One is we serve as an umbrella organization for all environmental groups and students on campus. The services we provide are networking services. So what we've done in the past is we've connected a lot of students that have the same kind of environmental passions together so that they can get together, form a club or form an initiative where they can actually do some sort of environmental impact on campus. The second thing we do is we provide funding for any students who come to us with an environmental initiative. We review with the board, a student board, and we decide whether or not we fund that group, and also we direct them to any kind of resources or contacts that we might have for them. So we've been doing this since 2003. We've had a lot of amazing projects. We've sent people to Copenhagen to represent U of T. We've had some beehives put up and some urban agriculture projects on campus that have been pretty fruitful. So I mean, I think what we're doing today is we're looking for a referendum question to see if we can incorporate GSU into kind of our levy organization.
Thank you. And so I'll just open it up to the floor to any questions that you guys may have. Yes, Claire?
With the levy, do students have a choice to fund your organization or not to fund your organization?
They have an opt-out?
Yes.
Yeah, I think they do have an opt-out option. That's correct, yes.
What sort of outreach do you guys do in terms of finding people that are to associate with your group? I mean, do you go to particular course unions at the university campus, or how exactly does that work?
Well, the biggest draw for us is usually the clubs fairs that we do at the beginning of the year, in the middle of the year, as well as our huge environmental week that we do once every year. So in these kind of events, we always have a booth set up where we actually take names to add on to our listserv, as well as to have candidates there to represent us, to explain what we do and how to get involved. We also have a couple of other things. One of them is an environmental working group, which is an open forum that we have monthly, where someone can come, anybody can come and join us and tell us about their interest and learn about other people who are there to express the projects they've worked on or the funding they've received in the past. So we have a lot of different positions for outreach, as well as different events which we attend.
Okay, and Ashley had a question, then we'll go to Daniel.
Yeah, so I guess mine's kind of a follow-up to that. UTERN does a lot of really amazing work on campus, but things like the clubs fairs and actually, I would say most campus clubs in general are really undergrad focused.
Right.
So how would you folks be interested in sort of getting connected with the people at GSU? Would you actually get grad students more involved in this?
To be honest, we're being undergraduate students. We're not quite sure how we would do that, but we definitely would hope to get some advice on that with the GSU and do anything we can to make sure that your voice is represented as well.
Okay, and then Daniel had a question.
I think maybe this is going to follow up to that one too. Right now, are there graduate student projects that are funded, and if not, then would they be funded now and more so because there's a levy?
So actually, by our constitution, we're not allowed to fund graduate projects. Having said that, we've actually funded a lot of graduate projects in the past already. There's one where there's like a green ceiling, I guess, sorry, not green ceiling, a green roof, sorry, on the civil building. We've funded that, and they're primarily graduate students who operate that. We've also, like I spoke about the Copenhagen trip that we had in 2011 or 2010, and that was a couple of graduate students were there, part of the group. And there's also the Water Environmental Association of Ontario. They've applied for funding in the past, and we've issued it for them. So by policy, we do not fund graduate-specific projects, but I guess this would legitimize the fact that we can fund all projects that happen on campus.
You, sir?
Why is the policy such that graduate students' projects do not get funded? Why is that in the Constitution? Why hasn't that been changed if you're coming to the graduate students and asking for money?
Oh, the reason was because our levy is entirely from the University of Toronto Student Union. So as soon as the GSU gets within that levy as well, then of course that would change.
I see.
Yeah.
So how much exactly is the levy?
The levy is 50 cents per student for the full year for full-time students, and it's 26 cents for the full year for part-time students.
So follow up on that, do you have like a budget of why you need that much, or would that 50 cents come from somewhere, or?
The 50 would be equivalent to the same thing a University of Toronto undergraduate student would pay. That's a full-time student. So we're keeping it per student at the same rate.
So again, follow up. So you're already getting from undergrad students 50 cents?
That's correct, yes.
And so you just want to include the grad students?
But you didn't answer this question about whether there would be a budget for the money.
Oh,
If there's a tangible budget you can show us.
So yeah, well, it's a follow-up. So you're saying we need grad students to get this extra revenue, right?
well, the reason we actually, it really depends on the year. So our funding is budgeted based on, well, all of our funding goes to projects. So whatever student group or students that come with initiatives, we fund that. And we try to be fiscally responsible throughout the year by pacing ourselves and allocating a certain amount for each semester. So we do have a budgetary process that we take for ensuring that we sustain the amount. The reason we don't feel like, sorry. So the amount that we have right now is sufficient for the undergraduate projects that we've come across and we've funded in the past. So the reason we would incorporate a levy for the GSU or for students in the GSU is because we feel like it's time to incorporate some graduate projects into the things that happen on campus. I mean, for our executives so far, we've never shied away from funding a graduate student project, but because it's in the Constitution that we can't, in future executives, we fear that they won't have the same kind of opinion that we share right now. So this is to ensure that graduate students have the same kind of access to this kind of funding and the same kind of resources and networks that we actually provide as an organization. So in terms of how much we need funding, it really depends on how active the graduate students will be when this becomes a UTERN levy that goes for both.
Michelle and then Nikita.
What's the current makeup of the board, and will that change when the levy is passed, if passed?
So the current makeup is not discriminatory on whether or not they're undergraduate or graduate student. Myself, I'm a graduate student. I believe I'm the only one on the board that's a graduate student of a board of 15. So in terms of how it would change is all positions are open for all students, undergraduate or graduate, so we don't discriminate on that regard. We do believe, I think it's still in the works, I'm not quite too familiar with this, but I do believe that we are going to have a specific GSU rep on board so that we have at least one graduate student represented in the board in the future.
Thank you. And Nikita?
So, follow up on those 3 or 4 follow-ups.
Sure.
So basically said that before that although it's kind of against your policy, you've still been funding graduate student projects.
Right.
At the same time, so I guess my first question is how many graduate student projects you couldn't fund because you didn't have the money? And my second question is, and I believe, actually, yes, okay, I'll split it up to 2. So first one is how many graduate student projects you couldn't fund because you didn't have the money for it.
Oh, you want me to answer
yeah.
like that? Okay. So none. So we've never been discriminatory on whether or not projects come from us from a graduate student or undergraduate student. So we always base our decision making on whether or not this has an environmental impact on campus. So I would say there's been none for that reason. So yeah, what's your second?
Okay, so the second question is a follow-up again to the first question. So since that's the case, and you've been saying that the levy from graduate students would legitimize your funding of the graduate projects, but does that mean that you guys need the money to kind of launder off your policy to make it official, though you apparently, as you mentioned right now, you don't really have that fiscal need for the money in the first place?
So I don't think it's to make it official. I think our mandate will always be the same. We're trying to promote environmental sustainability on campus. So what it does is with this funding from the graduate students, is it really ensures that you have the equal access to the funding for future executives that may not see the Constitution in the same manner that we have so far. So I'm saying that it's just, we want to make sure that everyone has the same access. So like, I can't guarantee that because I am graduating this year, so I can't be certain that in the future that this will still be the same. So by having this this funding from the graduate students, it's like an surety that it will happen for sure.
So just to clarify, that's like an insurance for the future, even though previously there were no issues of inequality between graduate and undergraduate.
In the 3 years that I've been in the UTERN, yes, there has not been any inequality.
So it's a future bottom.
It could have been in the past that it's been discriminatory, that the graduate students have been discriminated as well, but I'm not quite sure.
Thank you. I'm going to allow one last question, and this gentleman.
Hi. Yeah, as a JSU council member this year, I just wanted to say, thanks for bringing this to us. I really appreciate the initiative. And I think that, 50 cents per student is just like so reasonable, and I can't imagine anyone objecting that, so I'm sure it'll pass easily. I just wanted to ask you, what kind of sort of vision, do you guys sort of have a strategic vision you've established during this year for what kind of projects, what kind of impact you want to have on campus, and to what extent is that determined by the kinds of proposals you get?
Oh, okay. I think the function of our organization is more umbrella-like. So yeah, it's really based on funding initiatives that come towards us, as well as all the students that have an interest or passion that we've outreached to and who've come to us with ideas. So we have I would say, a very flexible, strategic kind of vision in terms of what we do in the future. It's really based on what the students want and what they have a passion for. And we try to do our best to give them the resources, give them the contact, give them the funding to make sure that it happens. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. Please give a round of applause for